Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun. There we go. Oh my gosh, I totally screwed everything up. I know what I did. I'm sorry. I used the camera yesterday on the laptop, and I don't have the audio following, so I've got to switch it over. Can you hear me okay? I think we're good. Oh, you know what? I should switch these around because you don't want that. That whole chart is just covered up by my head. Let's do that. I'll move that there. Move that there. Okay, this is a little bit better. Oh, no, you need to use main too. Now, why am I not hearing it? Okay, I need to restart that over here. There we go. Now I can hear things. Good morning, Kevin. Can you hear me okay? There's not like any static or noise or anything like that. I think we're all good. Make sure we got our news squawk on here. I'm getting a little worried because I was like, I gotta be ready for the non-farms. This is a big non-farm, so we've got to be there for the non-farms. We're here for the non-farms. So, the big number, U.S. Oh man, there's so many on here. Okay, U.S. non-farms payroll headline number. They're looking for 70K. Expectation here on my side is that we should be close to in line with that number. But with big risk of there being a large miss. So, like a negative number again. All right. So that's what we're looking at here. Good morning, Ray. Okay, I'm gonna try and stay quiet for this one, all right? What do we got? 20 seconds. Because I don't have the clock down here on this side. It's hard. I have to look. But I have it on my other screen. Ooh, mama. Ooh, mama. Okay, so it is lower than expected at 50K versus the expected 70K. Average earnings increased to, while year over year 3.8 versus the expected 3.6. Average earnings month over month, though, in line with expectations. And where is the unemployment rates? U.S. unemployment rate ticked down. Ooh, I think that the S&P 500 is going to like that. The treasuries, appear to be a little bit more mixed at the moment, but I'm going to bet you that in the end, they're going to resolve to the downside here. Because we keep seeing the unemployment rate tick up, tick up, tick up. And that was one of the big things that was kind of like, we're really concerned about the labor market, yada, yada, yada. So to see the unemployment rate tick down really kind of alleviates that. I don't think that it's huge. I actually kind of think that the numbers that we got in here, at least from the high level view, are probably the best that you would get. The big one that I don't get here on my my big board here is the revisions. So what was the revision? Participation rate was in line with expectations. Okay. Okay, the numbers that I just heard on revisions, the number I just heard on revisions there didn't sound huge. One thing I am noting in the numbers is that the private payrolls was actually much worse than expected. They were expecting a 75K and they got a 37K. So the increase actually came more from the government side than we expected. The treasuries are kind of bouncing up there again, but in this situation, I think we should expect to see a little bit of tug of war with it. So I don't know if that's like my expectation is still maybe slightly to the downside, but I don't think that necessarily invalidates it. We're gonna have a back and forth a little bit, and gonna have to wait good 30 minutes before we can see. Well, here's Nick Timmeros. Total payrolls grew by 50,000 in December. Private payrolls were 37. Employment for October and November resulted in 76,000 fewer jobs than previously reported on net for those months due to revisions. The unemployment rate also fell to 4.4% from a downwardly revised 4.5 in November. I think that there are some bad things in there. Like, it is actually one of the more mixed unemployment reports that we've had in a long time. But I'm still thinking that based just on the unemployment report and the initial numbers that we got, that's probably good for equities. And you can see equities definitely liking it. And it's probably a net negative for the treasuries. And we do see some evidence of that, but it's very, very subtle in the treasury. Also, I think that you might be able to argue, or, this is one of those situations where it's really hard to know without having a model that directly calculates it. But it may be the case that things like weekly rebalancing flows and things like that end up mattering more than the actual unemployment report. I've seen many, many times where, like, there will be a clear reaction on the unemployment report, but then in the end, the instruments don't do what would be suggested by the unemployment report at all. And so we're left to wonder if we're misinterpreting it or if there's another flow that we're not aware of that's more important. So I think that the other flows, that is something that we want to be aware of. There is a University of Michigan report later today as well. I wouldn't I'm not a huge fan of that report, but I wouldn't completely discount it right now. The market does still react to that one. So there's also that. Another big one is that we're supposed to get a ruling on whether or not tariffs instituted by Donald Trump are constitutional. And I don't believe we've gotten that. I think that when we get those things, that tends to be more in the 7:30 to 8:30 time frame. So that's another thing, is you might see the treasuries in particular, because here's the thing. Based on here's the rundown about the Supreme Court case in particular, is that the questions posed by the justices really suggests some skepticism about the U.S. administration's tariff policy. So the risk there on that one is that they deem it unconstitutional. And then especially if they say that companies are entitled to restitution on it. So in that case, the tariffs being rolled back would give companies more margin and would be probably a positive for the stock market overall. But the effect on the U.S. balance sheet would be devastating. And the S&P 500, they might react to that part of it negatively in the end, but the treasuries will definitely react to that negatively. So if that Supreme Court case comes out and it is that it's unconstitutional, I think the treasuries could take a major, major hit. So that might be another reason why the treasuries don't seem to be reacting too terribly strongly to the non-farms news that we just got. So let's watch it for a little bit. I'll be quiet. Wow, I'm seeing a tweet from the U.S. Department of Labor that says globalism has failed, Americanism will prevail. That is kind of a wild thing for a government account like that to tweet. So somebody on Reddit was asking me about the time that we got 40 ticks of slippage on ES. And I know that it's in the backlog. Like, I know that is saved somewhere. But what day was it? And searching through all of the titles. But just searching it on YouTube doesn't make it come up. Dude, I would never have noticed that. Thank you for pointing that out. I knew every time that I looked at that, I was like, there's something wrong about our title. But I just kind of dismissed it. But you know what else is that there's not anything actually in the title. So what happened with that? It's funny that none of us know. I know, right? Well, the thing that I think is funny is that I don't think that you regular viewers are directed to the live stream by YouTube. From the conversations we've had in the past and so forth, it sounds like that those of you that are really here every day, that you have the permanent live stream URL bookmarked. So, like, it basically doesn't matter what I put in the title. I just would have the title Day Trading Order Flow Livestream. I don't refresh the YouTube homepage till you show up. Wow. My gosh. So I asked... I asked ChatGPT, can you find the video where I experienced that huge amount of slippage? And it says, oh, I think I found it. But it linked me to a video that's not even one of my videos. It's not even one of my videos, so it's hallucinating. I think what I would need to do is export the title of every live stream and then have ChatGPT search through that. I wonder if I can use the YouTube API to do that and give it to ChatGPT and see what it says about my titles. Because I've always had a lot of question over, like, it seems like the title is like one of the few things that we have control over to change the performance of the live stream. But I've never found anything that, like, you know, you changed it this way and it has a big effect. Can you explain what market seasonality is? Yeah, so market seasonality is essentially the tendency for the market to move in a certain way based primarily on the time of year. The two biggest effects that you're going to see on here with this is that there's not very much activity or liquidity in the time period between Christmas Day and New Year's Day. That's the biggest one. The next biggest one is that there is less market activity and liquidity, although not nearly as severe as the Christmas time period, but during the summer. So basically between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Okay. Now, you can go and you can look at the way that the S&P 500 has performed on each day of the year throughout the year and kind of do a sort of statistical, amalgamation of it all to find periods of the year where the S&P 500 tends to do better and tends to do worse. And it just has to do with things like that businesses are doing different things at different times of the year. Another really big well-known one is that the biggest market declines have all happened in Octobers. So October tends to be a more defensive time. Now, for us, day trading, you're actually probably have more edge in looking at the day of the week and the day of the month. There tends to be significant rebalancing flows in the middle of the month and the last day of the month. The treasuries tend to do well on the first day of the month. There is a lot more activity Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday than there is Monday, Friday. If it's a Friday and there's no news on that Friday, those can be very, very quiet. And that's just like, you know, you can pull up my range histogram tools if you're paid, rather you have like a full license. The paid version of the indicator allows you to filter based on things like the day of the week, so that you can see how things like the day of the week affects whatever it is that you're looking at. And you will find that there are major differences. Wednesday tends to be the most active day of the week, which probably means like everybody thinks on the weekend, they get in on Monday and they're like, hey, maybe we should buy this. And so then they do all the analysis and everything on Monday, and then they discuss with the trading desk how they're going to execute it on Tuesday so that on Wednesday they can execute it. It's things like that. So there are proven seasonality effects, and those are one of the bigger edges that you can glean as a retail trader. Oh, what are rebalancing flows? So a good example of a rebalancing flow is this. There's been a lot of media attention on rebalancing flows that could hurt silver next week, where, if you're running a fund and you're supposed to be allocated in an index, or, in these cases, I'm a commodities index. So I want to own a little bit of each commodity. And what will happen is when one commodity goes up, then the value of that goes up in my portfolio. That is worth a larger percentage of my portfolio. So in order to keep an asset allocation equal to what I have in the prospectus, I will need to rebalance my portfolio, which means selling off some of my winners and buying more of my losers. And so that's what's going on in silver. Probably over the next week, we're going to see some rebalancing flows that are negative. That doesn't necessarily mean that silver futures will be down, but in this case, it's probably a pretty significant flow. So I think that like a short swing, short silver, depending on the price that you got, would make sense. Might already be too late, but especially when we were like higher up in the week, earlier in the week, short would make sense because essentially these funds have made so much from their silver longs that they have to sell some of them off. So that's rebalancing flows. In this case, they're talking about a major rebalancing and reallocation of the index that happens once a year. But, a flow that we see every month is rebalancing flows in equities. When you were doing that trade, when you caught all the slippage, what mark? Well, I think that we were in ES. It might have been that we were in micro ES. It might have been on micro ES contract. All I remember is that like it happened and I was kind of like, whoa. And it took me a while to realize how significant that was. And like I didn't trade for a while after that. I remember that. And I remember that it was 10 full points, so 40 ticks of slippage. I also remember being really bewildered by it. Like, it wasn't like a planned data release. But there might have been something where, like, maybe later on I did kind of figure out what it was. I don't know. I'd have to go and watch the video again. I need to keep a list here of, like, the best of Speculator Seth. So for those live streams that we really, really remember, So it's somewhere in my streaming, but I think I would have to do a little bit of programming wizardry to find it. It's worth bringing up as like, what's the worst case scenario? I don't know what caused that. I don't remember exactly. My recollection was that it was endogenous. But, if you're in a position and an unexpected headline hits and moves the market, that's the kind of slippage that you can potentially catch on your stop market order. Like S&P is pushing up a little bit more. The treasuries still within this range and actually at the higher end of the range at the moment. Oh, News Squawk was just talking about that the Supreme Court decision, they tend to come out around 10 o'clock. I don't know if we'll have it here before we're done with the stream. Oh man, I totally forgot about this. So something important I think we need to talk about. The Trump administration yesterday unveiled a $200 billion QE-style mortgage bond buying plan. So they're instructing Freddie and Fannie to go out there and buy $200 billion worth of mortgage bonds, which would essentially bring interest rates for mortgages down. Okay. So I went and I did some math, and there's actually some studies out there that basically say that for every $100 billion in mortgage-backed securities the government buys, the interest rates change 5 basis points. So when you do all of the math, that's a 10 basis point change, which is nothing for us. I mean, if I were to catch a trade where I made 10 basis points on the micro treasuries, I'd be quite happy. But like in terms of your mortgage, what does that actually amount to on your mortgage? A 0.1%. Essentially, it's like $30 on your mortgage. So, And I also did some research comparing it to past quantitative easing effects. And when they were buying mortgage-backed securities in the past, they were doing trillions. They were like in the $1.5 to $2 trillion range, like after COVID and after the 2008 crisis. So it is like a good headline, and you can see that the Trump administration is basically doing a kitchen sink strategy when it comes to housing. They have basically, and I don't remember when exactly this happened, but the Trump administration basically all of a sudden decided, hey, you know what? We're really concerned about the midterms. The Democrats can't take over the Senate, so like the major consequences from that legislatively, probably not a lot would happen. But what would happen is the Democrats would try to impeach Donald Trump again. So they all of a sudden kind of turned into this, well, we need to do something about the midterms. And part of it is that people are unhappy with the economy. But the issue, I really think, that Americans are affected by more than anything is the cost of housing. I am probably more interested in that more than anything else personally, because I drive an hour to work and I would really like to just move closer to the job and maybe get a small upgrade on the house. You know, I am not sitting here like, I really need a lot more room. But there are some things where the house, we've outgrown the house. It's not a big enough closet in the master bedroom. There's not a big enough pantry for us. I would prefer that the things that we have to put on all of the doors to prevent Asher from like escaping the house and everything could be built in and a little bit less ugly and noticeable. Things like that. So I would very much like to move, but I can't. It's just not going to happen. Just not going to happen when interest rates are so high and the interest rate that I've got on my current house is so low. Around what year and around what month did it happen? Well, I'm pretty sure that it happened before 2020. So I think that we could probably narrow it down to 2017 to 2020. But that's still a lot of live streams to look at, right? I also remember that we did put something in the title and said, yeah, well, we want to be able to find this again in the future, so let's put a title. I really do need to make like a spreadsheet or something that's like, you know, the best of speculators or something. So here's the thing. I totally have a way to do it. To figure out what stream it was. Because I went and I made a Python script. Oh, my connection kind of hopped there. I think we're okay. Anyways, I made a Python script that uses the YouTube API to pull information. And in one instance, I was using that script to change the video descriptions because the tools that YouTube had to change video descriptions weren't sophisticated enough at the time. They've actually changed some things, and I probably don't need that script anymore. But then I also, another time, adapted the script to pull the transcript, the YouTube transcript of every live stream ever. So I pulled the transcript of every live stream ever with the hopes of passing that data into a large language model. But the models at the time would not accept that much data, unfortunately. So I don't really want to mess with it right now because there's like keys involved and all that sort of stuff to do it in the code. But I think that it'd be pretty feasible for me to take that script, switch it around, and just have it create a list of every title. And then we could search. I could both do a text search through it, but we could also do a large language model, pass it to a large language model, and have it search through it to try and find the time that we lost 40 ticks. Another thing that we could do is we could find it in Jigsaw. We could go to Jigsaw Day Trader and create a spreadsheet of every trade that we've ever had and just look for a large loser from ES. And then that would tell us what day it was. I'm honestly maybe that might be a good thing to do on a Monday. Let's try and search for that more. I also, don't let me forget, somebody emailed me and I haven't been able to respond to them yet because I don't have the platform, my platform going correctly with data and everything for me to be able to pull it up. But they were asking about some of the multiple time frame indicators that we had. And I thought that it was included in the little script, but there was one that had like these swim lanes, like these things down at the bottom that would change color based on whether we were up or down on that time frame. And it looked kind of cool. And so I wanted to give him that because you can take that, and that was one that you could modify into whatever you wanted really easily. It was kind of cool. Maybe I should do more with that because people like that. You know, it comes back to this thing where, well, yeah, I'm trading, and I think we do okay with trading, but I'm not going to put a huge amount of risk on that because of the nature of trading. And we want to help traders become the best traders that they can. That's, I think, our most important thing. Unfortunately, a lot of traders aren't actually interested in becoming the best that they can. They have some idea in their mind of what trading is. And when you show them that that idea is a bad idea, they just kind of lose interest, right? So if I want to make money from making my own platform, because at the end of the day, I really do think that one of the biggest, most valuable things that I'm capable of giving the world is a better day trading platform. That's, you know, I have a unique intersection of skills that would put me in a place to make a better platform than anybody else. So, if I'm making a platform, part of that is that you have to give people what they want, or, you know, things that they want that they don't know they want yet, right? And that's how you get a product to sell. And that's maybe one thing that we have is people look at those, and that's really, really cool. And maybe I should do more of that. So on a different subject, I got a question for you guys. How were your ventures out on social media reading yesterday about the Minnesota ICE shooting incident? Because we did talk about it yesterday morning. I felt like I was a little bit scatterbrained, but we still had a pretty good discussion about it. But I was a little bit surprised by some of the things that I was seeing on social media. Did you guys see a lot of conversation about it? I would say that overall, first, that I did see a lot of conversation about it, especially on the more political media channels like Reddit. Reddit was absolutely obsessed about it. Here's the thing that I saw that kind of surprised me was on leftist forums like Reddit. It was the loudest they've ever been. Like, the level of engagement and extremism that I was seeing surpassed anything that I had seen before. It kind of makes you think, oh, like, they're really gearing up for a George Floyd riots level event, because, you know, that's kind of the level of social media activity that I'm seeing, except for that that's not really materializing from what I've seen. The left definitely like organized all of these protests yesterday, and I'm sure there's going to be stuff over this weekend. But let's see here. If that's what they're gearing up for, it's not the most extremist thing you see. Well, but like so when I say like the extremism that I've seen, it was really every comment that I saw about this was, this ICE agent committed murder, and anybody that doesn't see that must be a fascist. That's what I was saying. So there was this one post on advice animals, which I should have known better at commenting on advice animals, because that subreddit got captured. Basically, far left activists decided that they were going to use that forum to promote their stuff, and then everybody else left. That's why Advice Animals got taken off of the Reddit front page. Because they used to be on the front page, and they took them off because they were becoming too political. It was hurting Reddit. But anyways, they were saying like, well, ICE says that if you're a law-abiding citizen, you have nothing to fear. But I've watched this video now from 3 different perspectives, right? And that is like a really crazy thing to say to me. Because first of all, remember we were talking about this yesterday, that it's like we don't really know why she was there or what she was doing, but we did get confirmations of that yesterday. The woman in the car, it is confirmed, was a far left wacko. Like seriously, she moved from Colorado to Minnesota because of, you know, access to a more far left community there. Her son is enrolled in a private school that is basically all about championing social justice, championing social. Can you imagine going to a school that's about social justice? Is actually kind of like a little bit bonkers to me, because wouldn't you say, I want to get the best education that I can get. I want to get the best advantage that I can get. But you're going to say, well, I'm going to go to a school where I, as a white person, have an objective disadvantage. What are you thinking? That is crazy stuff. And you get pictures of her. She's gone full-blown left, shaved head, bleached buzz cut. Kind of, because the videos that the pictures that the media was showing of her when she just died versus what she looks like now were a little scary to me, honestly. She was a far lefty, right? So first of all, well, if you weren't there intentionally trying to obstruct ICE, then none of this would have happened. That's just straight up the thing. So I really, you can't say that ICE is just going out there shooting random people. No, it was because you were disrupting activity. You were disrupting police activity. So that in and of itself is like, well, this meme is wrong. But then the whole thing is that, yeah, we've all seen the video, and I have seen every possible kind of take on that video that you could possibly have. Like, seriously, it's so many people. It's really weird to me. It really highlights, in my mind, the unreliability of people and witnesses, because everybody watched the same videos. Not everybody did the same level of analysis on the video. And I saw so many people saying things about the video that were just objectively false. For instance, saying that, you know, he didn't fire until the car was well out of the way and driving away. And that is not what happened at all. The car accelerated, the wheels spun first before the officer pulled his gun out and shot. So at the moment where he decided to shoot, it really looked like that car was screeching and going right for him. And there's no way that he could have known that it was going to miss him. And you can go and watch it on slow motion. This is an objective fact that a large number of people on social media get wrong. So how can you possibly say that, like, everybody should be coming to the same conclusion on this, and if you're not, you're a fascist? It's just absolutely crazy. And people are coming up to different opinions on it, and it's not all partisan either, because then they say, well, it's just because the MAGAs are brainwashed. Did you know that with the Kyle Rittenhouse episode or whatever, YouGov did a snap poll on whether Kyle Rittenhouse was guilty of murder or it was self-defense. They specifically asked that and then did all of the demographics about that. And 40% of respondents thought that Kyle Rittenhouse was guilty of murder, and 35% said that it was self-defense. Okay. So the majority of people, by a 5% margin, 40% of them, said that Kyle Rittenhouse committed murder, when in the end, the jury acquitted him. So how is that possible? Well, it is because people were manipulated by social media. A lot of people didn't get the full story, didn't get the right analysis, and were fed a complete lie. But when you go in and you look at the statistics on it, 95% of Democrats said that it was murder, whereas only 85% of Republicans said that it was self-defense. So there was actually more dissent on the right than there was on the left. And you will see this time and time again in almost every issue. The left does not allow dissent and the right does. So if you're making some argument about, well, people disagree on things, but there's an objective truth, at which side is more likely to be having the objective truth, it's absolutely, without question, the Democrats are the ones that are going to be more likely to be seeing things simply because they are Democrats. So people on Reddit are arguing with me about that, and like the number of responses that I got in that thread were pretty crazy. And then I was seeing posts along those lines all day on Reddit. It was one of the most extreme things I've ever seen. So it kind of feels like that the left, at least, has been triggered by this incident probably more than anything I've ever seen. But the rest of America has not. In fact, when I went around, I see a lot of fatigue. It's like, because really it's been like a new thing every day, hasn't it? So I saw a lot of fatigue amongst people, especially people that, are really engaged in the news and are really paying attention to these sorts of things. There's a lot of exhaustion on it. But another thing that I saw that was really interesting was a lot, and I mean a lot of people that are kind of more, let's analyze the situation, the legal situation, like I am, acknowledging that the chances of them getting a murder conviction against the officer are practically nil. In fact, now that the investigation has been taken over by federal authorities, and so it's probably more up to the federal government rather than the state government as to whether or not the officer gets charged, I'm thinking that there won't even be charges brought now. No guarantee the state might still be able to do something, but the chances, there's a really strong chance that he doesn't even get charged with anything. And here Reddit is, oh, this is clear as day. Murder. Isn't that crazy? So there was actually way more dissent on other social media channels than I see normally. Wow, Paul, thank you for joining the Amazing. I appreciate it so much. So I found that really, really curious. When you think any police shooting is murder, all police shootings will be murder. Yeah, well, and it really, we are kind of stuck in a certain kind of political situation where everybody's focused about ICE. But when you really start to look at this and try and study it from, like I want to look at statistics and stuff like that, you very quickly realize that really what this is about police shooting incidents. Incidents where the police shot somebody. And the left almost always takes the position that the police murdered somebody. And when you really go down through all of the instances, especially the ones that became popular on social media and everything, what you find pretty much every time is that it was justified under the law. So we never really got to it yesterday, but this kind of comes to the let Seth put the political activist hat on. My you know, as a conservative, you know, analyst, commentator, and yes, there are things that I want to have happen, and I'm trying to convince people, and here's the thing that I would try and convince you on. The left abuses the laws and freedoms that we have to try and sneak communism in. That's straight up what they do. They have tried to weaponize social media from day one. They've been extremely effective with it. The systems and culture and society that we have is ill-equipped to deal with it. And the right has to punch back on these things. One of the ways that they do that is anytime that the police do anything, it was an awful murder. And ultimately, I believe that communism is an evil ideology. It is. Maybe I can get into this later. I can explain why I would say this, but I see the hallmarks of Satan's ideology in communism. It is the exact blueprint, and because it is an evil ideology, such ideologies always fail. So this is why the left has had such a hard time politically, is because it has been captured by, on the far left, an evil ideology. A lot of people would blame it on Obama. I don't think that Obama was a communist or was trying to bring communism in. I think that he was probably more just naive. He didn't realize the amount that what he was doing would help the communists and the far lefts, and which way it was going to go. And he's probably still in denial about it. But I think that what's really been driving it is that the internet has radicalized a large portion of millennials. This woman that was in that car, she was my age. She was an older millennial. From millennials on, the people that have been exposed to the internet are much more, like in all of the polling and everything, show more support for socialism. I put socialism and communism in my book basically in this same bucket, because the only difference is one wants to enact it through violent overthrow of the ruling class, and one wants to implement it through democratic reform. That's the only difference. Marx made communism to destroy nations in the most perfect way. Well, there was, like, because communism, the idea behind communism was that in order to have the socialism that I want, that has to be done through violent overthrow of the ruling class. Yes, the communists, everything that they did, they basically engineered their ideology to destroy nations. So what they use to market communism is not what you actually get when they're in power. That's why. Okay, I didn't look at the video that you posted, Paul, because I was talking. Let me find it. No, that is not it. 84 tick runner. That's definitely not it. Because, in fact, given the time frame, probably wasn't a live trade. But no, I think that it would have been before 2020, and it would have something specifically in the title about, like, slippage. Like, I caught 40 tick slippage in the title. It's probably an interesting video to watch, though. 84 tick runner. My AI has no ability to find the video. I try to list the prompts. Yeah. Well, and trying to get it, something I've found is that if you ask an LLM to do a web search type thing for me, like, this thing happened on Reddit, can you find it for me? They seem to be really poor at that. So, whatever. So what was I gonna say? Why do I see the hallmarks of evil in communism? I'll tell you why. In my faith, I get into what do Mormons believe. Some of you might think that this is really wild and out there, but I really think that there is some value in this, in analyzing the world. It's something that you're gonna see over and over again that I don't think is just some random thing that they're picking up on. It's a real deal. It's that the Mormons believe that everybody still existed before they were born in what we call the pre-earth life. And basically we lived in the presence of God in the pre-earth life as just spirits. And there are things that you can't do with a body. So everybody wanted bodies and to progress and become more. And so God said, okay, I can prepare a way for you where you will go down to earth and have lives and gain bodies. But the problem when you do that is that you're almost certainly going to sin. And no unclean thing can live in the presence of God. So in order to return back to God, there has to be a way for us to become clean again. And so God said, I will prepare a savior for you so that he can atone for your sins and you can all become clean again through the atonement. That's what Mormons believe happened in the pre-earth life, right? And somebody else said, well, hold on, wait a second. What if when we went down to earth, I just force everybody to not sin? And then there doesn't have to be any of this atonement. And you can just give all of the glory to me because it was my idea. Okay. And the person that said that was Satan. And Mormons believe that there was a big war in heaven then at that point, that all of the spirits argued about which plan they wanted to take. And all of the people that are here today are all the people that said, no, I'm going to go with God's plan where Christ comes and there's an atonement. And all of the people that went with Satan's plan were cast out and are evil spirits roaming the world. That's what Mormons believe, right? So at the heart of Satan's ideology is, I'm going to force people to do what I want. I want power so that I can force people to do what I want. And I'm doing it so that it will glorify me. That is the hallmark of Satan's ideology. And you can see it in communism. You can see it in these radical far left ideologies that you're seeing in the United States. They are trying to use power to manipulate and coerce people into doing what they want. The price of food isn't what I want, so I'm going to have the government take it over and charge the price that I think it should be. I don't like the pay that I get from my current company, so we're going to have the government take it over and force them to pay what I think that they should be paid. And I'm going to do this because it makes me look like a great and moral person to everybody on social media. I want to, instead of, working together with people, getting people on your side, changing legislation, changing the immigration laws, we're going to say, I don't care what the laws are. I'm going to try and use my power to coerce and impede and force people to not enact, not hold the immigration laws. And I'm going to do it because I think that makes me look like a good moral person. So even these people, you'll notice something like when you have extremists that commit crimes, they can't shut up about it for some reason. There's very, very many cases where, you know, after they do that thing, of course, they're not going to tell the whole world, but they have to tell somebody. They want their friends, like especially these people in Antifa. They're going to go and brag to all of their friends in Antifa because it's all about trying to elevate themselves and to appear more glorious to everybody else. That's what's going on. And it's kind of a little bit like just disconcerting, like watching this happen on the Democrat Party, because the Democrat Party has basically become like this magnet for grievance, essentially. I was discriminated against in some way, and that actually makes me better and more virtuous than other people. And they're basically competing to one up each other on who was the most oppressed, essentially. To the point that you have this huge swath of basically white people, especially white women, that are like, I've been so oppressed in my life. It's so insane to me that basically the most privileged class of people in all of society have all convinced themselves that they are oppressed, to the point that they're competing with each other as to who is the most oppressed. And they're making oppression up in their heads. That's why the left doesn't understand the right very well, because they are basically making a caricature up in their heads. They're thinking the whole time, like when they're in high school and maybe they don't have a whole lot of friends or whatever. And they're not thinking, well, maybe I don't have a whole lot of friends because I don't talk to people, or because I'm just not very good socially and I don't practice very well. No. The reason that I'm oppressed is because, or that I don't have any friends, is because everybody is secretly talking behind my back. I can't see them doing it, but I know that they're doing it. It's got to be all of those Republican jocks over there. And so they build this caricature of what the right is in their heads based on this imagined oppression that doesn't exist. There's always a middle-aged white woman. That's crazy to me. Not only in states, I'm in Croatia, and we have the same thing all over the EU. It's going to be something that's studied someday. It's absolutely going to be something that's studied someday. I hope that this doesn't like result in societal collapse, because if it results in societal collapse, then they'll really look at it. And I really don't like that people will try and use that as an excuse for like, I really, really hate the people on the right that are like, this is why women shouldn't vote, or things like that. No, that's crazy. But there is some sort of strange sociological phenomenon going on there. One of the theories that I've seen people share is that because society has basically demonized all of the natural outlets for femininity, that those natural instincts get placed on other things. They've been told, well, having kids is actually bad. Being a family woman and serving your family is actually bad and is oppressive. And the only way that you can healthily express femininity is within the confines of the Democrat Party. So then all of those instincts to care and nurture and so forth get placed on whatever group of people they perceive as the most underprivileged. That's one theory. I don't know how you would prove that one, but maybe there's something there. I definitely see that it's like, well, I don't know. On this one particular instance, the woman that was a driver had children. She was married to a man at one point. She had children. So that probably doesn't explain it in that case, does it? But when a woman becomes a left extremist, what they turn into really is crazy to me. And not only crazy to me, but I have a hard time explaining why they behave the way that they do. Why there's that gender difference. Yeah. Isn't it hilarious? I love when pictures of the groups come out and it's the exact picture you'd think it to be. It almost feels stereotypical or yeah. Well, you know, I'm going to say something that's a little dangerous, not because like there's something wrong with what I'm going to say or it's an unpopular thing to say or something like that, but because a lot of people have a hard time understanding this concept. It is like not natural to people. It is not the way that the human brain was built to think, and it requires higher intelligence to understand the concept. There is not something wrong with if there is some sort of a statistical property about things that is effective at predicting things, that you use that to predict things. Okay? Like, we know that there tends to be more market activity on Wednesday than there is on Monday. So we're going to take more trades on Wednesday. We're going to be paying attention to opportunities more on Wednesday. Does that make me racist against Monday? No, that doesn't make any sense. I make money from it. Okay? The problem is that there are some statistical properties where you're going to go and you're going to look at the average. And because of the distribution in that, the average that you're looking at does not help. And the case where this happens is basically where the differences for that property within the groups is larger than the difference between the groups. In those situations, that kind of a heuristic doesn't help you. And that is essentially what racism is. Racism is a statistical fallacy. You're going to go and you're going to say, well, this group of people has average higher IQ than this group of people. So if you were to go and take an individual person and look at their racial characteristics and try and predict what their IQ is based on those characteristics, it will be completely ineffective because the range within that group itself is wider than the difference between the averages, right? So you might hear that like Asians are like on average higher IQ. Like on IQ tests, Asians are like a 105. White people are like 100, okay? Well, that does not mean that you can take an individual Asian and guess that he's going to have an IQ over 100, because the range within that group of people is so wide that one statistic that Asians are, 5 points higher in IQ on average becomes completely useless. And that's what it comes down to for racism. So a lot of us will think, anytime there's some sort of stereotype about people, I should ignore that. That's not going to be useful to me. Well, that's not true. That's not true. It just depends on the very specific thing that you're looking for. Now, when it comes to race, the race is usually not very predictive of anything. There are some things where, like, politically and ideologically it is. Like, for instance, if you give me a black person, I can guess with a pretty decent chance, although it's getting weaker now, that they're a Democrat, for instance, right? So, there are some things about liberals now at this point that they really have become like a caricature of themselves. It's really quite wild how you know, if they're a radical leftist was involved in some incident, and you can come in and look at it, and they're going to be female, they're going to, you know, have this alternative appearance that is just quite ugly, have some sort of weird butch haircut. It's just every freaking time. It's kind of weird, isn't it? China itself made those stereotypes. So there you go. What do you think about the George Floyd incident? You know, so as I was going back through doing my kind of analysis of like, well, okay, so like what tends to happen in past incidents like this and everything, and by and large, the police are acquitted every time, like huge percentage of the time, and by and large on all of these incidents, I've seen social media say things that I think are crazy, and I will make predictions and or try to place bets with people, and I'm correct. So that definitely happened with the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. I said he'll be let off on self-defense, and that is what happened. I tried so hard to try and get anybody to bet me on that one because that was just like, this has got to be easy money. I could never get anybody to actually put money on it. That was the case with the Charlie Kirk shooting. Was, I guess this is a little bit different because it's not a police shooting incident, but I said that the shooter was a furry, you know, doing it because of transgender ideology, and that was the case. That was confirmed by state officials, even though Reddit keeps trying to push this idea that he was a right-winger. It's just not the case. But I did not talk very much about the George Floyd thing, looking back on it. That information was all over the internet. You just agreed with it. You didn't predict that. Well, I mean, I went and I would say that it is a prediction to the extent that like there's information on the internet that very clearly leads to a certain conclusion, but a large number of people on the internet don't believe that. So you are making a prediction about what's going to happen in the future, like that Kyle Rittenhouse will be acquitted, right? That the majority of at least Reddit and social media disagree with. I consider that a prediction, right? But anyways, I maybe it wasn't my idea. I guess. Is it any idea our idea? Sometimes I wonder. That's too existential for today. But I did not talk about the George Floyd incident very much at all. It looks like that when the incident happened, I didn't pay attention to it at all until the riots were already happening. And then we were talking about the riots themselves and all of that, and I never really opined on the incident itself. And so to that point, the only thing I can say about the George Floyd incident is that I believe in the U.S. court system, and the U.S. court system found that that officer was guilty of murder. Now, I think that particular case is still in dispute, like that there are, what is the appeals? There are appeals pending and so forth, so we just kind of hold. But I don't follow that a lot, and I don't really have a strong opinion about it. You know, I was asking ChatGPT because one of the things that happened is I went through this analysis and I said, this officer is going to get off. And Reddit, I had people on Reddit disagree with me so strongly and were so aggressive and insulting me too, is like really directly attacking me. So I really was kind of funny because there's a bunch of times where they're like, no, only Russian bots would say those sorts of things and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, look, I'm a real person. I've been on Reddit for 13 years. I post under my real name. I have a live stream where I live stream every day, and I've been doing that for almost a decade. Not quite a decade yet. I am a real person. I'm absolutely a real person, and I'm really good at what I do, and you don't want to mess with me in that kind of way because, you know, you try and claim that I'm a bot, then we're just going to laugh about it and make fun of you, you know? And there were some people that, like, when they realized who I was, were like, you know, I'm not gonna argue with this guy anymore. That did happen. So I asked ChatGPT. Here's the information that we have. Here's all of the information that we have, and what's most likely to happen. And Reddit says, you know, that I must be crazy or deluded or a fascist or something, because there's no way that any objective person could possibly come to any other conclusion than that the officer committed murder. So they are basically gaslighting. They're trying to get you to question your perceptions, essentially. So I asked ChatGPT. And what ChatGPT said was, well, Reddit, basically the way that Reddit is structured, it makes people that post moral certainty have the advantage in the algorithm. So if you're coming in and you're saying this officer definitely committed murder, people are more likely, the people that say, that believe that, when they read that resonates with them more than the people that read the hard analysis and go, yeah, that guy is correct. They don't always upvote that person, even though they agree with them. And so the social media basically amplifies the voices that are the most extreme and the most sure of their moral position. And that is why social media basically becomes a contest about who is the most moral or virtuous. Is that is the result from these upvote systems where people selectively upvote. Like, you can upvote or downvote something, but you don't have to upvote everything. Then that's the result. Which is something that we've talked about before, but not necessarily within that context, and kind of got me thinking a little bit like, oh, okay. Because I'm kind of starting to come to the conclusion that some of the things that we are trying to do here with this YouTube channel will simply cannot succeed in the current setup. We would need a different kind of service, or the service would need to change in significant ways in order for our message to come out, because it doesn't trigger people's sense of moral superiority. Certainly there could be some things that we could do to tap into that a little bit more to help the channel, but we're probably, because of the nature of the truth, you know, maybe we're at a little bit of a disadvantage there. Something that maybe I should be pushing more is that people are pushing day trading strategies that don't work, and that's immoral. These people shouldn't be out there telling people these things. Promoting funded trader programs is immoral. I do believe that. pushes people towards strategies that are more risky and unlikely to be sustainable. And coming in with the message of this is wrong, this is basically a scam, probably resonates with viewers more than, well, here's what the square root law is. Here's the thing about the markets that the professionals know that they're not telling you, which really is that the impact of a large meta order tends to follow a square root law. And maybe I'm just not, I think that there was a time, especially maybe when I was unmedicated, where I could absolutely be that person that is just crazy on social media and pushing the moral. Like, I remember I was pretty good on Facebook for a long time, posting every day and posting something that kind of made myself look good and everybody liked and got likes. But then even then, over there, they changed the algorithm and people weren't. Okay, so we're getting the University of Michigan number here now. So 5-year inflation preliminary was higher than expected at 3.4 versus 3.3. I wouldn't say huge deal. And 1 year came in at 4.2 versus 4.1. But we all know that 1 year inflation preliminary expectation is absolutely bonkers. And nobody in their right mind that actually knows what they're talking about thinks that. That is a case where I really don't think there's anybody that is like an economic, researcher, analyst that really looks at these numbers that thinks that it's going to be 4.1. It's coming purely from Democrat consumers that have been, convinced by the media that inflation is super, super high right now. Understanding the number. Prop firms, it's like having a drug. It's fun, but if I don't want to give my drug up, yeah, well, and I guess the one of the other problems that we have with pushing kind of like the moral superiority kind of theme with promoting trading content is that, well, maybe day trading overall, or at the very least, teaching people and talking about day trading is immoral. Because I'm not here to convince anybody to do it. Somebody has to do it. But what most people end up doing is pretty akin to gambling in that they stand a very little chance of making money, but it gives them a big dopamine high and gets them addicted. So you're kind of always fighting that. And so that is maybe why in the trading space, the winners really become who had the biggest winning trade, and just throwing that in people's face, which in and of itself, I believe is immoral. Well, I mean, listen, if I make a big winner, I probably make a post about it too. But there's a certain level of which this happens that people promote that I don't think is good for people. But really, that comes back to, like, the real question would be, okay, Seth, so what kind of a social media system can we devise that would change that? I don't have the answer. Maybe I should be spending more time trying to think about what the answer is to that. Anyways, it's time for me to get going. Kind of realizing, my first meeting isn't until 9:45. It takes me an hour to get there, so that gives me like 45 minutes. So I could go till 8:30, but I don't think that would really make a difference for us most of the time. I'm more comfortable getting there at 9 right now. So, but maybe in the future we'll change that. But if I go a little bit over, it's not the end of the world. And just remember that. But after 8 o'clock, you got to remind me. It's time to go. Thank you, Paul. Hey, we'll be back next week, and I'm hoping next week we take some live trades. So see you guys then. In the meantime, stay